So, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court just ruled on another state in this ongoing redistricting battle. This time we're talking about Alabama, and Democrats have taken another loss. And so now there were two majority black districts, aka Democrat districts, in the state of Alabama, but now there will only be one. And of course, the narrative that the left is going to push, that they are pushing, is that this is an attempt to take away black voters' rights. But don't get it twisted. That's only because they're furious the Supreme Court will no longer allow them to hold on to their race-based districts. And what this really has done, it has basically, it's exposing the left. They're exposing themselves because they're not even trying to hide what they will do if they regain power. And so let's start right here.
Elected officials are reacting to the Supreme Court's decision to allow Alabama to change its congressional maps for the upcoming general election. Good evening, I'm Sherry Jackson.
I'm Carly Lang. As we first reported last night at 10, Alabama will now revert back to its 2023 congressional map. CBS 42's Scott Minshaw is in Montgomery with reaction.
With the Supreme Court's decision last night, all eyes now turn to congressional districts 2 and 7, which are the seats held by Democrats Shamari Figures and Terry Sewell. Secretary of State Wes Allen says this new map is a 6-to-1 map, meaning he believes that one of those seats will flip Republican. The Supreme Court will allow Alabama to revert to its 2023 congressional map. Congresswoman Terry Sewell's District 7, as well as Districts 1, 2, and 6 will be impacted.
The Supreme Court, by its decision of lifting that injunction, has really sanctioned having racially discriminatory maps in the state of Alabama and throughout the land.
Alabama Secretary of State Wes Allen praised the Supreme Court's decision.
We're extremely excited and proud that the Supreme Court lifted that injunction, allowed us to move forward with the 2023 Livingston map. A lot of hard work. A lot of folks, didn't know exactly when the ruling was coming out, but we're really pleased that the Supreme Court moved when they did.
Congresswoman Sewell says she is still confident Democrats will hold on to the 2 seats with the 2023 map.
The Supreme Court will not have the last say. It's the people of Alabama who have the last say. I will be running in District 7. I think Shamari will be running in District 2. And, we hope that people will come out and vote, organize, mobilize, and vote like they've never voted before, because ultimately, every American should have a voice in this democracy. Every American.
And so let's break this down, what actually happened in Alabama, because the left is trying to make this sound like black voters just lost the right to vote. That's not what happened, ladies and gentlemen. The Supreme Court allowed Alabama to use its 2023 legislator-drawn congressional map for the 2026 elections. That map has one majority black district out of 7. And it's expected to favor Republicans. Before this, Alabama had been using a court-selected remedial map for the 2024 election, a map that created 2 districts where Democrat voters, aka black voters, had the opportunity to select their preferred candidates. No resistance, basically, from Republicans, and a state as red as Alabama. And that is the key point. Alabama wasn't even using the map that was passed by lawmakers. They were using a court-imposed map. And so when Democrats try and say the Supreme Court took something away, what they really mean is the Supreme Court allowed Alabama to go back to the map drawn by its own legislator, instead of being forced to use the map selected by federal judges.
Well, Caitlin, so heading into tonight, Alabama had a map where of the 7 congressional districts in Alabama, 2 of those had been drawn to be majority black, Democrat-leaning districts. However, now as a result of this decision, that's going to go down to 1. And this is all based off of the Louisiana Supreme Court opinion that came down in late April. In that opinion, the U.S. Supreme Court said the states can essentially draw congressional lines for whatever political reasons they want. They cannot, however, consider race either way in drawing those lines. So the state of Alabama took that opinion and said, okay, we now want to undraw one of those majority black districts and go from 2 down to 1. And in tonight's opinion, the Supreme Court, in a 6-to-3 split, the 6 conservatives in the majority, the 3 liberals in the dissent, said, it's okay, Alabama, you can go ahead and do that. So the net out of the end of this is that Alabama will go from 2 majority black Democratic leaning districts down to 1. And I should note, Caitlin, the dissent here is quite impassioned. It comes from the three liberal justices, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. At one point, they call the court's action, quote, unconscionable. They say that it tramples on the rights of black Alabamans to be represented with their votes. But this is the new reality in the court. Ever since that Louisiana case came down, there have been, this is the next in a long line of domino effects, and one seat will probably swing as a result of this.
It's so funny because the media is regurgitating what Democrats are saying, which is that this is going to negatively affect black voters because they won't be able to elect their preferred candidates. But the problem with that is that's not how voting works. Democrats were happy to have these maps, of course. Majority black districts, why not? Because they knew those were safe and secure seats they could count on in deep red states. But now they have to actually work for it. And that's something they don't like. And so that's why you keep hearing black people being brought up into this whole equation. And with that, you have the race hustlers of the Democrat Party, such as Hakeem Jeffries, Timu Obama himself, who are panicking because this spells trouble for them come November. Take a listen.
I think we all recognize the sensitivities of the moment in terms of an unprecedented Jim Crow-like assault on black political representation that has been unleashed by the Supreme Court's outrageous decision to gut the Voting Rights Act.
The MAGA majority on the U.S. Supreme Court just issued another partisan political redistricting decision. Now, a three-judge panel had previously ruled that the map that Alabama Republicans were attempting to utilize intentionally discriminated against African American voters. That three-member panel consisted of one judge appointed by Ronald Reagan and two judges appointed by Donald Trump. And yet this reckless and out of control Supreme Court just decided to overturn that decision in order to do the political bidding of the Republican Party. That's what they've consistently done with respect to gutting the Voting Rights Act. This Supreme Court is out of control. They need to be reined in. They have zero credibility. And when we take back the majority, we're going to enact dramatic change.
Understand this, because Democrats do not like losing and will do anything for power, Hakeem Jeffries is basically admitting the quiet part out loud, ladies and gentlemen. Democrats ever get back into power, they are not just going to accept the rules as they are going to change the rules so that way, it benefits them. And Republicans need to take that seriously because Democrats have already shown they are willing to do almost anything for power. We've heard them. They've talked about packing the Supreme Court when the court does not rule the way they want. They have pushed to make Washington, D.C. a state, not because it makes constitutional sense, because it doesn't, but because it would likely hand them more Senate seats. Flirted with the idea of getting rid of the Electoral College because it forces them to win more than just the biggest liberal cities. Tried to redraw Virginia maps using deceptive language, then celebrated like they pulled something off. Hakeem Jeffries was out here talking about F around and find out, then cried when the Virginia Supreme Court stopped it. They support race-based districting when it protects Democrat seats, plain and simple, then scream racism when Republicans use redistricting to protect Republican seats. After losing again, Hakeem Jeffries is out here warning everybody that when Democrats get power, they are going to change the system. That's not defending what America stands for. That's telling you it only matters when they're winning.
I want to give you a couple quotes. There's a commission that was done by the Presidential Commission by President Biden. They actually recognize the risks associated with the Democrats' drumbeat of packing the court every time there is a decision that is issued with which they disagree. And what they stated is actually there is a profound disagreement over whether court expansion at this moment in time would be wise. We know that it wouldn't be wise because we know the purpose of the court expansion drumbeat is to nullify constitutionally, statutorily based decisions that are issued by the Supreme Court that the other side disagrees with. That is the bottom line about this discussion. Are there times when the Supreme Court disagrees with me or I disagree with what the Supreme Court has said? Absolutely. But I don't turn around and say, say, well, we got to get rid of them. That's a totalitarian, despotic way of looking at what our judicial system is. We have Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 for a reason. Article 3 covers the judiciary. We are not supposed to be interfering.
The Supreme Court's ruling is not based on Democrats' emotional argument about race. It was based on the Constitution, and that's why I agree. Because the Constitution does not say one party is entitled to safe seats. It doesn't say that every racial group is guaranteed the district drawn around race, right? It's important that, yeah, we have the right to vote, which hasn't been taken away. You get equal access to ballots, to register, to organize, to campaign, to run for office without discrimination. But that's not good enough for Democrats because they keep trying to turn a race-based district into a civil right because they know those districts become automatic, safe Democrat seats. And so let's go to MS now because they too had a lot to say about all of this. And of course, we're melting down about the court's decision. Take a listen.
Tonight, we are following a number of developing stories very much about how radical this moment is in our country right now. Just in the last hour, we, for example, have had important breaking news out of the United States Supreme Court. The court's conservative majority has granted an emergency request from the state of Alabama to discriminate against black voters, to allow the state of Alabama to use a Republican-backed map that deliberately eliminates one of the state's 2 majority black districts. This will, in terms of electoral politics, this will almost certainly gain Republicans another House seat. It will further reduce black representation in Congress. This, of course, comes in the wake of the High Court gutting the Voting Rights Act. Sonia Sotomayor penned a pretty intense dissent to this decision tonight. I'll just read a little bit of it to you. She says, "Before the court are 2 paths. Down one lies an orderly election held under a tried and tested congressional map that protects black Alabamians' right to vote and with which all voters, elections officials, and candidates alike are familiar. Down the other lies a chaotic election held under a never-before-used congressional map that intentionally discriminates against black Alabamians, that Alabama adopted in unashamed defiance of a prior court order directly affirmed by this court, and that will require officials, listen to this, will require officials to change the voter registrations of hundreds of thousands of voters in just days at best, a task that Alabama previously represented would take months. The majority chooses the second path and disregards both democratic values and the rule of law. I respectfully dissent."
Just listen to the phrasing they are using to describe this to their audience. It's so deceptive and it's so soaked in. How can we spin this to paint black people as the victims, right? And so when she says the Supreme Court is discriminating against black voters, we keep on hearing that. If you're just tuning in and you're watching MS Now, that's where you get your news information from and you actually feed into what they're saying, you believe it. As a viewer, you're going to say, wow, the Supreme Court did what? In 2026, this country's going backwards. And what does that do? It creates chaos eventually. But that's all emotional because they are not discriminating against black voters. Newsflash. I mean, shocker, right? That is not the outcome that they are seeking. Their intent is to get rid of a Democrat district. That is the outcome they want. The same way in the Northeast, you have states where even though the population may have 30, 40, 45% Republicans have no seats or maybe one. Democrats' intent was to limit or eliminate Republican seats there, and they were able to do it successfully. And so the intent is partisan, but partisan does not mean racist. But that doesn't stop people like Al Sharpton, the OG race hustler himself, from telling everyone that. Take a listen.
Joining us now, Reverend Al Sharpton. He is the president of the National Action Network and host of the Politics Nation on MS Now. Rev, good to see you. Under this new Democratic map, under this new map, Democratic Congressman Shamari Figures would likely lose his seat. He wrote in a statement, quote, The Supreme Court has now confirmed that there is no longer a Voting Rights Act in America, and states are essentially free to discriminate against minority voters with no consequences. This is a dangerous ruling that sets the state and this nation back decades. Rev, is he right?
He's absolutely right. To be able to arbitrarily just overturn with the state court, we're talking about state of Alabama now, a red state, a state court that obviously reflects the politics of that state, which is how those people were on the court. And they're saying that the district should not be disturbed because it would cause too much confusion. It would cause too much crisis, even in voting. As Lisa was laying out, they don't even have time to inform people of what district they're in, to register in. So this is clearly a right-wing Supreme Court that is determined to break up the Civil Rights Act in any form, particularly when it regards race. Now, the Supreme Court said in their decision that you could regard, or you could take into account partisan stuff, party politics. They're not even doing that here. So we are left in the state of Alabama that has over a third of the population black, with only one black majority congressional district in terms of voters. And that is bringing us back to the pre-Selma, Alabama days, and forcing us back to doing what we need to do, and that is put pressure in the streets. We're having a big march August 28th in Washington, and to put pressure on elected officials that they must turn this court around.
I mean, of course, they bring on Al Sharpton, like I said, the OG race hustler who doesn't even hide or try to disguise his language at this point. This is why he has no problem saying that Alabama's 1/3 black, right? But will only have one majority black district, because he knows what that really means. Democrats will only have one guaranteed seat in Alabama. That is what that means. Listen. This wouldn't even be a discussion if black people did not vote Democrat 95% of the time. If it was 60-40 even, it would not be a conversation, because it would not just be so easy to create these maps based solely on grouping black people together. Black voters still have the right to vote. That doesn't change. And actually, now they will have an option. They will have options. But the left, they don't really like that idea. But those are my thoughts in the update. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your comments down below. I appreciate when you guys chime in. Don't forget, enjoy the content. Smash that thumbs up for more. Subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.